Dear chess friends, dear ChessMood family, I'm Grandmaster Johan Helsten, and today I'm happy to share with you another interesting topic, exploiting hidden pins. Here we are playing white, and as you can see, we already have many pieces in our attack, so it's a good moment to start calculating and try to find a direct win. At this point, please pause your video and try to find the beautiful way in which white won this game. In the first place, it makes sense to look at the captures. So, knight takes f8, black will then take with the d rook. He cannot take here with the other rook, because then we would have this typical mate on g7. By giving up the rook, we would give mate on g7 next move. So after knight takes f8, black must take with the other rook. And here we could try rook g7. Unfortunately, black has no reason to take on g7. He could simply play king h8. Okay. Let's go back to the beginning and check again. Is there any other candidate move perhaps? Well, it appears that knight h4 is also an interesting idea, because in this way we're exploiting the pin along the b1 h7 diagonal. We're putting pressure on the pawn on f5. Unfortunately, black has a very nice counter resource here. Speaking about pins, black could play here rook takes d3, and this is what I call a cross pin. Unfortunately, white cannot take on d3, because then he would lose his queen. So he would have to take on g8 instead. But here, black would just take back with the bishop, and he has everything defended. The idea of exploiting the pin along the b1 h7 diagonal is excellent. However, it should not be done by means of knight h4. We should instead go back where we started. Knight takes f8, rook d takes f8, rook g7 check, king h8, and here we should look a little further. The king is no longer on the b1 h7 diagonal. However, the pawn on f5 is still pinned, so to speak, because if it wasn't for this pawn, well, white would give mate in one move. And I think at this point you already know what white is about to do here, right? Exactly. In the game, white found the beautiful move queen g4, exploiting the fact that the queen cannot be taken, because then it's mate in one, rook h7. It was not easy for black to defend himself here. If he plays, let's say, queen d7, trying to attack the bishop and at the same time prepare the move e6, white could simply take on f5 with a double threat, mate and taking the queen. After queen d2, there is only one last trap that white must avoid. White should not play rook g2 here, because then black would have the counter sacrifice, queen takes g2. And after queen takes g2, he's ready to take on g7. Instead, after queen d2 check, well, white will simply play king h1, and it's game over, because there is no way for black to defend against the mate on h7. For this reason, in the game, black instead tried bishop h5. It's a clever try, because if white takes now on h5, well, then the queen would no longer protect the rook on g7, so after rook takes g7, black would save himself. However, in the game, white continued with the idea of giving mate on h7. He played here bishop takes f5. And as you can see, the rook on f8, suddenly it's overloaded. It cannot control f5 and g8 at the same time. So here, if queen takes f5, white would simply play rook takes g8 and it's mate. On the other hand, if bishop takes g4, well, as we already know, that would follow rook h7 mate. In fact, after the move bishop takes f5, black resigned. So if we go back to the beginning and we try to understand what happened here, was that white noticed the importance of this diagonal, and he saw that the pawn on f5 was pinned, so to speak, along this diagonal. And for this reason, he took on f8, gave check, and here the very beautiful move queen g4, exploiting the fact that the pawn on f5 cannot move. It's pinned to the mate on h7. At this point, I would like to share with you a little exercise. In this position, we're playing with the white pieces. What do you think would be white's best move here? Please share your answer in the comment section. Thanks for today, and see you next time. Thanks for joining the channel and ChessMood.